What we're going to go into now is I'm a technical founder, so I'm someone who builds a lot. I try not to deliver PRs too often these days if my team's here, but I build a lot in my hands on the tech a lot. And what it means is that we've been building assistants. We've been using our own tools to build assistants and agents inside of our product. So I'm going to spend some time talk to you about our challenges, what it looks like, how we built it, and really go a level deeper in like how this stuff works. So our journey, we have a Copilot assistant in product, and we started off with, like a lot of people do, this little window to the side. And I think there's a huge opportunity for just better UX design of these and UX integration to product. We're going to show you some of the changes we made and how we've integrated it in. But this has just been really a platform for us to deliver AI into the product. What it means, where we've gone is the assistant itself has 30+ skills at this point. I'm going to show you some of them. Some of them are around creating dashboards and graphs. Some are around like debugging your data. Some are around searching across your data for issues. So these skills are things that like either kind of function calls or stuff below the surface that our assistant can do in product. And the way we start off a lot of different architectures. I would say this is a really common approach. I see team after team after team after team. And what this is there's 2 LLM calls. There's a router call, which is determining what intent, what skill to take advantage of. It's a tool call. And there's a skill which might include an LLM too. And the reason we only have 2 is because 2 is a lot to string together. You're going to see it takes some of these, it takes a little bit of time. But what we do is most assistants I see in products look something like this. It's kind of a router, determining intent, and some amount of work down here. So what it means is each red box here has a prompt template associated with it too, typically. Now you can have a user in the loop. Like you'll see that's what we do. We have a user in the loop of our assistant where we come back to the user interface after 2 LLM calls and get more data. And so I'll show you in a second what this looks like in practice with a demo. But this is a very common approach, which is a router, a tool call, which might include an LLM, and then a user in the loop. So this is one layer router, very, very common architecture. Where we blew up and kind of where we went to in Arize over time is we ended up with routers and LLM calls in our assistant that broke out different things in different user interface entry points. So in one of these cases, I'm entering from a dashboard and I'm creating a graph. In another case, I'm entering from a search portion and doing a bit of search. So the complexity grows over time, but you still see a similar pattern. There's a routing thing that's determining what skill to take advantage of, maybe based upon my user interface location. And there's a skill that leverages LLMs sometimes, most of the time it is, to do something special. And I'm going to spend some time on AI search, which is pretty fun. It goes across the data and it helps you analyze and debug it, but I'll also do some graphs and some other things for you too. We also use our software every day to build this agent and assistant, which is a great way to build software. We dog food our tools, we build with our tools. And a lot of the stuff that you'll see is that our platform kind of integrates across production and development. I think all platforms that do what we do have to do this. The evals and evaluations that we use in development, we also use in production. I'll pause for how many people know what an evaluation is these days? Does evals mean something to the room? Share hands. Okay, quite a lot these days. Well, when we say evals, we typically mean LM as a judge or using AI to help evaluate your system. Kind of meta, but that's what's happening here. Is we're using AI to evaluate AI. You're annotating your data. You're using data sets, and so this is kind of and I'm going to show you a bit of a demo of what this looks like in practice. So give me a second here. So let's try the live demo. Hit it. Can you do the live demo? Okay, that worked. Wow, high tech. So first off, this is an example of what an assistant looks like in our system. Each one of these is a chat back and forth where there's some input. In this case, it's asking a question about an SDK. There's some response going on here. There's some potentially retrieval system, retrieving chunks of docs, maybe from a Weaviate who's going to speak here. There's some synthesis in the LLM and response. And what we're doing, I mean, some of these will be hundreds deep in calls. A single call, if you're using a framework, can be 100 deep in time in the amount of calls that occur. So the first thing I would do, the first thing we all recommend doing is kind of tracing your agent, tracing your assistant. You have an entry point, you have some things it's doing. In this case, it's one LLM call. So you trace so you get your data, and then you evaluate. So you'll see evaluations kind of attached here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and what these are. What these are is essentially AI evaluating the question and answer here. In this case, AI has kind of said the SDK, there's no mention of the SDK in the reference text, what's up. The response is problematic. And so this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what this looks like. Now, what I wanted to do was actually show you what does our assistant look like, and where are those integration points, and what challenges have we had in building it. And then I'll tie it back to the product we use. So one way we have an assistant here is we do have an AI search capability. Sometimes you have questions and answers, and you might want to find all frustrated users. It's a pretty common one. So you can really type in anything you want to search across. And the challenge of this one, like I mentioned, there's 2 LLM calls. There's a first call here to figure out what to go do. There's a second one that pulls in like all the data and then searches across it. In this case, I'm finding people kind of annoyed or frustrated with our platform. And you can build filters from these. So first one is just AI search, being able to kind of search across your system in certain ways. But I can do other magic, so it's not just search. We decided over time, we wanted to, people might want to just understand the type of question. So I might want to do some analytics before I filter. So what I showed you was a search and filter. I can do things like, what are the top questions being asked? So I can do analytics on my data before I go filter, which is a different skill. So as a router, it's realizing my question wasn't about filtering, and so it was really about analytics. My question's about the top questions being asked from the user, so it kind of knows what columns is in the data, what the traces data is, it knows what to go grab it, and then pulls it in and looks at it. So there's the top questions around SDKs or certain metrics being asked. So you can enter through a certain spot and call different skills based upon what you're trying to do. I can also do things like, a common thing here is we have those evals we were talking about. Customers have hallucinations and evals around those and evals around correctness. Well, I might want to know what are the top reasons for hallucinations. And so you can kind of use this for finding problems and building data sets. And you can spell things wrong, like hallucinations, and typically we'll get it right too. So there's quite a lot you can build on top of one entry point. So this is kind of one entry point we have in the system with a kind of a router around it. And in this case, it did find hallucinations, span evals. Information's not present in the reference text, is using those explanations to figure out why it hallucinated and giving you reasons. So quite powerful abilities to kind of build filters and do analysis. I also might grab data off and build data sets for my testing workflows, which I do a lot of. But I want to give you some other examples of where the assistant actually gets used. There's examples in dashboards. We have a dashboard assistant that helps you create graphs. So if I want to create a time series widget or something, and I just create a time series for token counts, total, and prompt. I can do this on the fly. I can choose the data to run across, and this will kind of create, create graphs. We'll create graphs that add. Here it's asking, it's not sure the metric I want, so kind of asking me some questions. Can you do total count on tokens? So if you don't get it right, it can ask you questions and kind of build that chart for you, which is kind of a nice interaction paradigm. And so this entry point here is, and then I can show the kind of stuff it's created. I can add it to the dashboard with kind of a click of a button, and I kind of have my graph, whatever it is. So there's lots of different entry points and things you could do. I can do search. We also do evals. So Gemini, for example, runs as data's ingested. There's these evals that run on top of data as it comes in the platform. So we have Copilot and our assistant that helps you write these templates where Gemini as a model from Vertex is running on your data and augmenting, seeing whether it's hallucinated or correct. So there's integration points here where we help you write templates for an eval. So let me kind of just edit this, and let's create a template for you create an eval to detect maybe angry users. You could do, or frustrated users. So long story short is we've come up with different ways. I mean, as you think about building assistants and building, so this kind of rewrote the template here and I can save it off. The assistants and agents is a platform to be able to deliver AI into your products. And these assistants are going to be built into SaaS platform after SaaS platform after SaaS platform, powered by the data. In our case, we're building an assistant to help you build AI, but and we're using our own tools to do it, but every single SaaS platform out there is going to be delivering an assistant to every white-collar job in the US to help them with their day-to-day. And you all are probably building a lot of those. And the idea is that you can integrate these in, you can use this concepts of LM routers and tool calls to make it work. Hopefully that gives you an idea of a little bit of our platform, a little bit of how it works, a little bit of like what an assistant looks like. And I probably have time for like a question or two if someone wants to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that you're assuming that everyone in the audience is already in the process of building agentic systems.
Yeah.
And you're showing a way of making them work better, of debugging them and analyzing them. Where maybe you could just, for some of us, step back a bit, because I've used models for specific tasks, code translation, migrating to the cloud, but it hasn't been an agent system. It's been like setting something up in a tool like SageMaker or something like that.
Yeah.
And just, doing batch transforms from storage in the cloud and then producing output and checking it. So I'm having a hard time understanding what the problem is you're solving. I mean, I can imagine this agent paradigm, but maybe if you could just back up a little bit and explain what it is I would be trying to do. Maybe in the contents of a RAG system, because one of the things we're thinking about is having something which can use our corporate data to answer questions as if they were trained in a model, which they aren't. And we have so much data. I work for the Federal Reserve, so we've got like lots of data, right?
Yeah.
And how we would go about doing that. So maybe if you could answer the question in that context.
Yeah, so I think as you saw, every single feature I probably showed in the platform would not be accessible or executable with traditional ML in any way, shape, or form. So I think what you're trying to do, so what we see is,
I'm not talking about traditional ML. Yeah. We're using models. We're using like Llama 3, for example, to do these things. So it's not traditional ML. It's not an agentic framework. It's more of prompt engineering and having different phases where we process the data to do different things, then get an answer. So we might do SQL, natural language to SQL conversion. We may go to a data catalog and find the relevant data. Then we would have it create a Python program to display it. Those types of steps, which I think are different from what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I would say, so the real question here is, I think it's a question you hear all the time, is what is an agent? Maybe that's what you're even getting at. Like I'm doing prompts and templates right now. What is an agent? And the key areas which I typically look at is there, and I've heard kind of people in the ecosystem say this, but what we see it is there control flow, and is there iterative fashion on data? And in this case, you're iterating with user input. Control flow is an LLM in front of it deciding what to go do. And then you're doing an LLM call, or it could be a function call below that. So all we mean by an agent is in iterative fashion, making decisions, taking in data iteratively with, typically it's an LLM router or a tool call in front, and it's doing something below it. So you might even be doing it today. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but in the first generation of what most people were building was a prompt response. One call, you're done. And what we've kind of evolved to in the last year is using tools, so controlling the flow of that, and then doing something with those, and then potentially iterating on it. Yeah.
I could just ask one more question.
Yeah.
Because you're getting toward the problem that we're trying to solve. So we work iteratively, and one of the things we find we're writing special code to do
Yeah.
is to manage the context, because there are things you want to keep, and there are things you don't want to keep.
Yeah.
And as you're going through generations and doing your prompt engineering, you have to manage that, because otherwise you're going to like run out of buffer, right?
I think that's key. I think the number one thing actually in most systems though is tool calling. So do you use do you do tool calling and specialization and then prompts below that and calls? And is there flow control and iterative loops on top of your system? If you're just prompts and responses, I would say it's probably more of the tradition, you're probably the kind of the first generation of systems here. I do want to give anyone else one more here. And sorry, I'm a little over. One more question.
So with what you were displaying earlier,
yeah.
It seems like there would have to be a very deep integration between your tooling and the underlying systems, whether it's the model calls, the tools,
yeah.
the calls to Weaviate and so forth. So how do you address things like security and whatnot, in the sense that I'm building my system, which might be in my cloud.
Yeah.
Am I using you as a managed service? Am I installing yours as an agent? Just how the integration part of that would work.
It's a good question. So if you want to get started tomorrow, we have open source. So we do, so instrumentation-wise, we believe in OTel, which is typically, I think, where everyone's going right now from an instrumentation perspective. You can get started with our open source. As you scale to enterprise, most of the companies in my vertical have something that deploys on your software, so into your VPC. So it's like Databricks meets Datadog type delivery. I don't think the data leaves your system if you're most enterprises typically right now.